Forgive me, I have a cold, so if I sound a bit off, you know why. But the latest DLC chapter for Little Nightmares 3 just dropped, and because I talked about Little Nightmares 3, I thought I might as well talk about the DLC chapter when it came out, so here we are. But right from the bat, I just want to say, yeah, this was a massive improvement from the base game. I think Supermassive definitely listened to the criticism they received for Little Nightmares 3, and have improved upon themselves and sort of like how they do everything from that criticism. So good steps all around. But hold your horses, there's still some things here that don't quite work, but I will talk about the good stuff first because I don't want to be a complete downer. So my main issue with the third game was that I just didn't feel scared for the most part. Very few of the scenes or enemies unnerved me. Whereas in the Backstage level, I felt unnerved. It had a great use of claustrophobic dark rooms, the puppeteer was creepy and fun to watch move, like her animations just mwah, brilliant. Just how she moved around like a living doll was just the cherry on top for me. I also enjoyed the puzzles. I actually had to think about some of them in some instances, whereas the base game I don't remember a single puzzle because there were barely any puzzles in the base game, which is bad for a puzzle platformer franchise. And I really enjoyed the main gameplay gimmick, using the lights to progress, solve puzzles, or even find some secrets. That was just really good. That was like a unique new concept, or the way they did it was pretty fun. Very nice. And the story has left me excited for what's next. I want to know more about this new lighthouse location. I want to know what happens next for Dime. Although, let's be honest, Dime's probably not going to make it. This is Little Nightmares after all. Oh, yeah, random thing, off script, but we had dead bodies in this chapter, which is great because the previous games always had like dead bodies littered everywhere. It's like, yeah, this world sucks, people die in it, isn't this great? Not really. Whereas the third game didn't really have that. Well, it had like a few like residents of the nowheres like dead in the background, but there were no dead children, and it's like, it's like they wanted to avoid that, and it's like, you're the Little Nightmares franchise though. Why are you doing the Little Nightmares franchise if you don't want to acknowledge that kids die in this universe? But they acknowledged it this time around, so great. That's gonna sound terrible out of context. So this is the right next step for Supermassive. Don't get me wrong, I think they still have a long road ahead of them to repair their reputation with this franchise. First impressions matter after all, and Little Nightmares 3 was not a great first impression by any means. So we'll probably take this, the next chapter, and potentially a fourth game before people are happy with Supermassive again. Let's be real, there's going to be a fourth game no matter what. Bandai are not going to let this franchise go anytime soon. But for Supermassive to continue to improve upon how they do Little Nightmares, we do need to talk about the issues with this DLC. This is essentially the Residence 2.0. You've got the same enemies with the same weaknesses, similar gimmick with using the light to progress, and there were some spots where it did just look like we were in the mall, again if I'll be honest. But at the same time, I'm not too fussed about that. Like, it's worth mentioning, but it's not... doesn't break the deal for me. Because if Supermassive can make a good copy of a previous thing done by Tarsier, then they can take that experience that they gain and use it to improve upon the new ideas that they bring to the franchise. Little Nightmares 3 had a lot of new ideas brought to the table, but because Supermassive didn't quite understand what makes Little Nightmares, they fell flat on a lot of areas. I'm okay with the DLC being similar to previous stuff if it's being used as a learning experience. Tarsier definitely did the same thing with their DLC, Secrets of the Maw, because you see a lot of ideas that were in the DLC which then made it into the second game, but they were massively improved upon. However, I do want to point out another little tidbit is this DLC chapter was just a massive asset flip. Nearly every room is filled with stuff we've seen before in previous games. And I imagine this was used as a time-saving thing, so more work could be, hopefully, put into the second chapter, which looks like it's going to have a lot more original assets in it. If I see a lot of copy-pasted assets in the second chapter, then I'll make a big fuss about it then. But right now, I don't care too much about it. Like, some assets being copy and pasted, like floor stuff, like floorboards and everything like that, I get that. Like, you don't need to spend a lot of money on a DLC chapter to have brand new floorboards modelled. Like, the floorboards from previous stuff is perfectly fine. You can copy and paste it. It's like that Aloy thing from Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, where people saw she had the exact same grapple down animation. People were like, oh my god, why is it the same? It's like, because it was a perfectly good animation. You don't need a brand new one for a second game. And it's kind of like that with this one. Mundane stuff like floors and walls and stuff like that, I don't care too much unless it actually does hurt, so like the art direction of the area, whereas in the Backstage I don't think it affected it too much, whereas the lighthouse looks like it's going to be a completely brand new area, so if I see a lot of asset flips over there, that's when I think it's going to be a bit like, hang on guys, I think you do need to actually invest in some new assets here. This chapter has made me wonder about like a few story beats though, because it looks like maybe now that we're going to be focused on the mirror dimension. I've never seen this before, but I heard loads of people talking about it. That when Little Nightmares 3 came out, people had a look at the files and they found that they saw this scrapped mirror dimension, and it looks like that's coming back in the DLC, which is just sort of making me wonder, so like, did this DLC need to be a DLC? Looking at Secrets of the Moor, we learned a lot about the Moor. You had, we learned about the lower levels, where the granny is, where she's been left abandoned to rot away in rage, and then we learned about the engine room, and that the gnomes play an integral part to the Moor, to its continued sort of existence, to its function. They run the engine, they keep it working and everything like that. So we learned about that. And then we learned more about the lady in the third chapter. So like what her deal is. So like mirrors, just so like why she is so terrified of mirrors. And that she is like the main creation behind the gnomes. And also we learned about the existence of shadow kids for the first time. Whereas in this chapter, it's like, okay, yeah, we learned that shadow kids are tied to the puppet, so that probably means that of course they are also tied to the school kids, but that was just kind of a thing that you could come to a conclusion of anyway, or at least that was my conclusion for the longest time. I don't know, maybe they felt like not enough people were sort of like drawing that natural conclusion between the bullies, the shadow kids, and now the puppets, so maybe they were like, oh, we'll just, you know, merge the gap a little bit more to make it clearer. But yeah, aside from that, we didn't really, because I don't know, like, now that I listed out, it's like, okay, we did learn stuff. We learned about the puppeteer. She makes all the behind the scenes stuff for the carnival, so the carnival, you know, technically can't really function without her. She's an integral part to it and all that. But at the same time, I wouldn't say it's an earth-shattering secret revealed, unlike what the Moor kept introducing to us in its DLC. But also, the fact that this DLC was tied to the carnival yet again just kind of further adds fuel to the fire of my argument that maybe Little Nightmares 3 should have just been focused around the carnival. It's clear that everyone involved in the production of Little Nightmares 3 really liked the carnival. That's the most detailed level out of the entire game, I feel. And then we also just keep coming back to it like every other non-game related release to the franchise. We just keep coming back to it. It had its own chapter in The Sounds of Nightmares. I believe there's a book around it. And now it's got a DLC chapter, and it's like, why didn't you just make a whole game around the carnival at this point, since you keep coming back to it and keep fleshing it out with all these new characters and other levels that are hidden inside this flying machine? I'll go on more about this in the next video when the next chapter comes out, but if we really are going to see the mirror monster, if we really are going to see it, then at the same time it's like, why wasn't that the original villain for the third game? Because it looks like they wanted that to be the main villain for the third game, because if you look at concept art for the main poster, you'll see that early on there was a clear figure standing in the mirror behind our main characters, but that's all obscured and everything in the final version of the poster. So we can see early on that they had an idea for a mirror monster-like character, a mirror to Lo, because we've always had a mirror to every main character. We had the lady for Six, we had the Fin Man for Mono, he quite literally was Mono in the end, and then Lo, it was just sort of like the hypnotist, or Otto, and it's like, Otto's not really a mirror to Lo, I have to argue. Like, unless we're going to find out something in season 2 of the podcast where Otto finds Lo, and Lo has this ability to travel between dimensions with these mirrors, and Otto's like, oh, that's it, that's my ticket, you're my one-way ticket there, boy. But of course we don't really know. But if the DLC is so like returning back to the original idea of who the main villain was originally supposed to be for the third game, it's like, why is this a DLC? Why wasn't this just the third game? Because right now, Secrets of the Maw was a let's flesh out the world more, let's add more to this, let's reveal the answers to questions people were asking, or even give answers to questions people didn't even realize were questions in the first place. Whereas right now, the DLC isn't really doing that. It's just more so like, oh, here's some things we wanted to have involved in the story for the third game, but had to be cut for one reason or another. But again, I'll probably focus more on this in several months' time when the DLC does come out. But right now, I'd actually like to look at the story, like a little thing about the Shadow Kids, because I'm really thinking about that actually in this chapter. For the longest time, we always assumed that they were a result from the lady, like, you know, she rips the souls out of children and you get the Shadow Kids as a result, and that's all we had to go off of, really, because that's the only place we've ever seen them, in the Residence. Whereas now we've seen them here, and it does bring new questions to the table about, so like, okay, how do these things come about, really? Then in the school we see what appear to be Shadow Kids with now to shell, that being the bullies, but we don't have much else to go off of from that. Until now. Now we have this chapter where we see Shadow Kids in the area where the puppets are made, so now we can only come to the natural conclusion that the Shadow Kids are the key ingredient needed to create these little tiny constructs. But we don't know why Shadow Kids are here, there's no explanation for that. We have some evidence that the lady has been in contact with the carnival, but as far as I know, there's nothing in the school to suggest that sort of connection. I've heard some people say that the lady sort of like sells these Shadow Kids over to like other residents of the Nowhere, and that's how we sort of see them pop up in other places. I don't know about that. I personally can't sort of like weigh in on this, like for or against it, because I'm not fully caught up with everything. But it did just make me wonder, maybe Shadow Kids are sort of an integral, like, element of the Nowhere. It's kind of like ghosts in fiction. Everyone has the expectation that ghosts are dead people, but there's loads of different ways that you can have a ghost. In some fiction it's sort of like, oh, it's only vengeful souls that can turn into ghosts, and then in other fiction you have it's sort of like, oh, anyone can become a ghost. And I wonder if it's sort of like a similar thing with the Shadow Kids. Like, they are the tormented souls of children, but there's different ways you can make them. So, all Shadow Kids in the Maw are the creation of the lady, but not all Shadow Kids in the Nowhere are a creation of the lady. But again, we're probably not going to get a straight answer to this anytime soon. But aside from that little lore questioning right there, that's all I have to say about the DLC until the next chapter. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting back into Little Nightmares 3, definitely check out the DLC because this was an improvement. This was so much better. Anyway, I hope you're having a good day. I hope you don't have a cold like me. Take care, and I'll see you all around. Bye bye.